There you go.
And if they pronounce the S, I don't know where.
We live in Illinois.
Right?
Illinois.
Illinois?
That's what I think.
Yeah, well, it's also Des Plaines.
There you go. Du Bois, Illinois.
Or Joliet also.
That's good. I'm rooting for RB, not for EP. Slaughter rule in the playoffs, right?
This is just a kind
Is there a slaughter rule?
Okay, we're live again if you. Okay, you ready, Bridget? Mm-hmm. Okay, good evening. The hour being 7:08 PM on Monday, April 22nd. I'd like to call to order the Village of Brookfield Committee of the Whole meeting. Bridget, could we have a roll call for the committee, please?
Trustee Ketchmark?
Here.
Trustee Cote?
Here.
Trustee Hendricks?
Here.
Trustee Gilhuli?
Here.
Trustee Kaluzny?
Here.
And President Garvey.
Here, thank you. We have one item to discuss tonight, and this is something that came up in the course of our budget workshops and discussions. Just kind of talking about the great asset we have in the Old Grosedale Station, Brookfield Historical Society, and Trustee Ketchmark has been key in taking a lead on this. We have a great resource there, and we're just trying to figure out how to use it better going forward and what role the village might have in it. Tim, do you want to kind of provide a summary of where we're at, and then we'll kind of maybe, Trustee Ketchmark, if you want to chime in and maybe kind of guide the discussion about what our options are.
Sure. I think you teed it up very nicely. From staff's perspective, we have this wonderful resource that is the Grosedale Station, oldest building in Brookfield. It's a beautiful building, both from the outside and from the inside. The village owns the property. The Historical Society owns the building. In the form of Mr. Ketchmark, Trustee Ketchmark, and his society, they manage and fund capital improvements and so forth, whatever needs to be done. All the exhibits have been planned and organized by them. If something needs to be done, a new furnace, new windows, new roof, it has been done historically through fundraising of the society. When Kit was village president, we started a conversation several years ago about what can we do to improve and increase public access to the building. From my perspective, and the building is not open very often, and that's because there are no people to be there and to staff it. I think that's a shame, and I've always said, for instance, if somehow the village were to take over either ownership, management, or assume a more formal role, we could create, through the village board's approval, a line item budget in the municipal budget to fund not only maybe the presence of somebody who could be there to open the doors, turn on the lights, make sure that basic questions of the museum are answered. We could have a part-time employee there. If capital improvements were needed, we would have a budget, an annual budget, just like we do for all facilities, of X number of dollars. I believe we put $30,000 the board approved in the budget this year for potential improvements that we'd all want to make to the station, the building. It's really, staff had a meeting with Trustee Ketchmark last week. Purpose of this discussion is really just to kick off. Staff's not here with any recommendation. We're not here with any, other than the fact that, from my own personal opinion, I think it warrants discussion by the board. I think it warrants some type of collaboration with the village and the Historical Society in some form I would love to see more access to that building. And it's a treasure. It's everybody, I've been in there several times. When I watch people's reactions when they walk in there for the first time, everyone's always like, well, this is really nice and really neat. And I just think that more people want to and need to get inside. So, Trustee Ketchmark, I'm sure you've got a lot more to share than that.
Well, maybe a little, little background at the risk of sounding a little redundant with some of this, but the Historical Society was formed in the 70s. I think it was 76 or 77. Before there was a building, they were homeless. I think early meetings were at Norm's Country Store here in Hollywood, where Taco Hero is. It was a fairly active group initially then. The opportunity came up with the Grossdale station. Burlington Northern was knocking down these old stations. They had already knocked down the Hollywood station, Congress Park station. The society felt this would be a worthwhile project going forward. They did get the building listed on the National Register before it was moved, I think as an effort to help save it. Ultimately, the station was moved. It was bought for $1 from the railroad, moved to its current location over here. Just seeing how active the society was, I mean, picture moving a building, raising the funds to do this. This was entirely done through volunteer efforts, whether it be, contractors helping out with the foundation for the building, or the work to being done, or the volunteer group sifting through the stones out in front of the building, so there ended up being a lawn out there. Very active group. There might have been 8 to 10 committees as part of the Historical Society early on. All the different parts that they would work on as part of the Historical Society, as part of the museum. It probably took a good 10 years to get it to the point where it could be open as a museum. The group still was very active. My wife and I got involved around Centennial time, so that was 1993. Little by little, you saw the group move away, pass away, unfortunately. They had rallied around saving the station. The station was saved, so now it could just kind of morph into running a museum. Subsequent to that time, we've seen more people move away and more people pass away. So it has become very challenging keeping it operating because there isn't quite the rallying cry, but we have seen a lot of interest in history, and people would come and go and partake in what they could offer in terms of their historical interest. When you think about, the hundreds, if not thousands, of community residents that have participated in this project over the last 40 years, it's pretty overwhelming. The tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars that have been raised for it. It's really been quite a substantial project for the village. When we had the 125th centennial of the village, many of you had worked on this. Trustee Gahuli, you were a big part of this too. We had a major redo of the museum inside, and really were able to present this as a museum that people could come in and see. That hasn't brought us overwhelming attention or help, unfortunately. So it is kind of challenging, keeping it going. We have talked about ways to have the museum open, but I think part of that and part of the discussion we should have is, a way for people who are interested in the history of Brookfield to participate. So not just in the museum being open, but what the museum has to offer, the history of our town, something to take the place of the society per se. One of the conversations we have had was with the resurrection of the Historical Commission, which the village still has on its books. That was begun during the centennial year in 1993. It's kind of fallen on the wayside after a few years there, and it's sat dormant. But it is still a commission, and some of the thoughts were maybe the commission gets reinstated and staffed, and what they basically get to do is deal with history in Brookfield as well as the operations of the museum. Dollar-wise, it's about $5,000 a year for the society to pay utilities, pay insurance, to open the doors and have lights on and have heat. And Anything beyond that is raised through fundraisers. Back about 20 years ago, the society and the village did partner up on an IDOT grant that had gotten the slate roof put back on and some window repairs and that. As Tim mentioned, the village does own the property. When you see the address of the property, it's 8820 and a half, because when the village hall was built over here, the village hall kept the address of 8820. So that property is 8820 and a half Brookfield Avenue. But the society being the group of members, I'm assuming, Adam and I have talked about this a little bit, I guess the society and its group are the owners of it. We do have a bill of sale from the railroad for the $1 that it was purchased for. How that works with transfer, that, it's not overly clear yet. But that kind of brings us to where we're at here today. And I think we have a tremendous community asset. We've seen this when it's open for different events. We saw it during the holiday celebration and the thousands of people that came through for this and just stood in awe. Boy, I've never been in here. This is so neat. So how do we make it more open? How do we let people who are interested in history partake in that? And like I said, for the society that's been around almost 50 years, it's tough keeping it going. So.
I mean, there's so much, I mean, I think you're underplaying how much other expenses and work there are, because I know personally that you and your family and a few close people fund other necessary things. So you think about having a piece of property in a building that old. We have things go wrong in our homes. You can imagine when things go out there, whether the power goes out or the heat goes out, you got to worry about everything from frozen pipes and everything else like this, and just the landscaping and the gardening and the weeding and everything else. But I agree, it's such a tremendous asset. We had that cleanup day, was it last spring? Just one of those days we were all there cleaning it, and the purpose was to be there to clean, and people, young families were walking by and saw that it was open, and we didn't plan on it being any type of open house, but there was 3 or 4 groups of people that day, families who just came in and said, can we come in for a minute? And they were just, Tim, you described, they're just astounded, their jaws dropped, and when you go upstairs and you see the old station master's quarters and things like this, it is truly an asset. So it's kind of just trying to decide, what to do going forward. I don't know how the dynamic works. The fact that, we budgeted money and there's, some money there, and obviously we can talk about it at future budget in terms of what the financial contribution could be. But, the fact that it is on village-owned land right now, does, give us some ownership interest in, in terms of what happens over there and what an asset it is. But I tend to lean toward, I do think that we try to revive the historical commission and, stock it with people who have shown an interest in the past. And I think there's, just new people in general that might have certain talents and experience that might help that commission. Is it a 7-member commission, or was it a 7-member commission, Trustee Ketchmark, if you recall?
I'm not sure offhand, but part of it at that time was there would be a representative from the book committee. Many of you have seen the big, thick history book that was done during the centennial. That was called the book committee, and they had a representative on the historical commission. The Historical Society would have a representative on the commission, and then there would be other members at large. So there would be some tweaking with the wording of the commission and the makeup as to, we don't have a book committee anymore.
Right.
But I would think, 7-member-ish kind of thing.
And we could put that up on, committee of the whole to talk about reviving and, restocking but I know it's almost like which comes first, the chicken or the egg? Do we restock that commission and revive that commission before we talk further about a transfer of ownership in the building to the village? What's your thought on that?
At our staff meeting last week, we talked about this a little bit, and I think probably the most prudent thing for myself and the society to do is to reach out to our members, or those we would call our members, for thoughts and comments, because I mean, I guess they are the owners of the building still. Though there hasn't been much participation, I think the thing to do would be, if we had a public meeting for the society as feedback, and then look to how we can transition to something to partner with the village. I've always said there always should have been a stronger partnership between the village and the society. I think when the group, they were called a hysterical society at first. They have this idea of saving this building, that there was no way this was going to work. It was going to fall apart as soon as they moved it. But they did make it work. And it's truly amazing. And if you step back from the society and everything else, you think about the village of Brookfield, Grossdale, was incorporated in 1893. That building was built by Samuel Gross in 1889, so before the town was even incorporated. So we have a building built by the founder of our town before our town was even founded, and it's still standing here as our museum. I mean, it is just such an asset for the town. But in terms of the society, it is there. I don't know that it's in a place where it can continue doing what it's done for the last 40 years. So to figure out that transition becomes a little tricky for us, but I think that would be the thing to do, in that it is the society's building. I mean, each of you have part of this. I mean, each of us gets a shingle or something.
What's the basic membership number of the society, if you had a?
It depends what you consider members. I mean, if you look at our donors, you probably have 100 people that make their annual donation to us. And part of that donation is filling out the form that kind of calls them a member, I guess. The participation amongst that group, everyone does what they can do. It just, there isn't a tremendous amount of help amongst there. And again, when the station was saved, it was the rallying cry. And for that group back then, I think it was like a social event too. I mean, I remember early membership meetings were on Friday nights. And then my wife and I are getting involved, and like, this is what we're going to do on Friday night. But this was the group that they just had such a good time doing this, and the efforts they put into it. It's transitioned away from that, certainly.
Well, I mean, I think there could be maybe new energy towards them, because, I mean,
Absolutely.
this is about saving it again, because if we do nothing, I mean, the people that are taking care of it now are not going to be able to keep doing it, so we can't ignore the problem. So maybe there can be new energy about saving it and improving it going forward.
But it's in a position now where the building's there, it's saved, it's structurally sound, we have a museum, we could open it up. I think it's a great opportunity to figure out how we can transition the village's role in this. Whereas before, when, the crazy idea of saving a building, okay, you guys deal with that, we don't want to deal with it. But we're past that. So yes, you're saving it again, but it's kind of a transitionary thing. How do we take the next step? You've seen this with, how many meetings we've had from, the various groups over the years, from the American Legions to the Kiwanis clubs, and that. It's hard keeping the volunteer groups going. And the society has been the same way, really.
With that in mind, I wonder if it's necessary to have an entire 7-member commission, wondering what the day-to-day business of that commission might be. I mean, from month to month, what they would have to discuss.
Well, I mean, I guess it goes back to a historical commission. So, one of the things, actually, I think Bob Opus is working on this a little bit. We were looking, the historical walking tour of Brookfield and the historical sites, if you're putting together a map of that. I mean, House Walk, History Week,
Okay.
I mean, the group that, part of the commission meetings could be having lecturers come in to speak about whatever. I know when we'd have the meetings at the station, that was challenging because 30, 40 people in there would be extremely crowded. But, I mean, there were some pretty interesting speakers we had come forward. I mean, that could be part of the commission. I mean, it would be a history commission. So for,
Also, other things to preserve in town potentially that are not preserved. And we've seen some of those facades and hoped that they get saved, and there's not any language for that. So that's something that commission could take on. And I know Steve in the audience might have some public comment later about this topic. But we've also talked about, like, you know, heritage tree preservation and different, there's lots of
Could be more than
Historic
just, more
things
than just
about-
the building with the commission.
I'll also share, I know Trustee Ketchmark knows this already, but I had a past life as a volunteer manager of docents at a museum. And I think there could be a really cool docent program that the commission could help manage as well. So people that may not want to serve fully on a commission, but would be interested in, you know, volunteer shifts in the open times when it might also be staffed. There's also probably a lot of digitizing and different projects that could be happening beyond it just being open. You know, if people aren't there, there's things that could be done.
and I think, I think my concern with the village just hiring someone to keep it open is we're missing out on so much there. I mean, how do you keep the history alive? I mean, you know, I remember part of the history book, there were the oral histories taken, you know, and to record some of this. It was really interesting the other day. Bob Uphughes had gotten a call from resident passing through town. Their relatives had owned a cigar store here in town 100 years ago when they heard we had the sign. And they wanted to come in and see the sign. So we do have the sign. It's in there. It was actually cut off the front window of the building. It's called Tabor Signs. It was right next to where Gosha's is now. But the reminiscing and the stories they started talking about, and then they had the story that the grandparents would tell them where Al Capone actually had come in there at one time into their cigar store. What do you do with the stories like that and the history like that? It's more than just having the museum open. It's how do you preserve that history? You know, so that's part of it too.
I mean, the idea of the docents, I mean, and maybe some of the, you know, more active, longtime society members who are not looking to commit themselves to, you know, commission meetings and things, they have the, you know, institutional knowledge base. Maybe those people could become, you know, the docents and the people. I mean, I do think there's going to be a need for a staff, regular staff person to be there to open it, but that person, there's no way that person could have the institutional knowledge and things. They're
Right.
more of a kind of a custodian, gatekeeper type thing, but we have to tap into some of the resources that we have with these people and get people that can, you know, help tell the stories and help preserve things and help set up things and move things around, and is my thought, so.
Yeah, I think if we put bring this historical commission back to life, I would look to find residents with specific skill sets to balance all of these great ideas that have been coming up. So like a designer, a curator, a historian, maybe a librarian, somebody who's got fundraising and development background, you know, the digital, like some kind of digital information specialist, right? Find this team that could really balance how to do some of those things, how to capture new history, right, or recent history, or things that we're just discovering, and then how to turn it into something, whether it's at the Historical Society as part of a display, or maybe it's a historical display here or exhibit here at Village Hall or at the library or at any of our other public spaces. So it doesn't have to be limited to that building, because we could spread it throughout town and share it. Maybe it's a traveling exhibit, right, that we're sharing it with other local libraries or schools. So I think that this team, there would be plenty for this team to do. All the ideas that we've just heard, I think, you know, the house walk, the business district walk, you know, the society tours. You could have art projects based on past things, not just the displays, but like you said, the lecturing at the libraries. you know, maybe something would be something historical about the fire stations, right? We've seen the old pump that we have, what is it, inside the Historical Society, and the old fire engine. I mean, that could be an experience that we have during some of these events where we have people walking all over town that maybe we could open up if we had the people dedicated to it, not necessarily staff, but the volunteer commission as well.
Well, remember, history is happening every single day.
Yeah.
So much of the museum and what's in the museum is the early part of Brookfield's existence. But I remember one of the things Chris Stack would do is every day he'd be around taking pictures and documenting things. You know,
Yeah.
a lot of those pictures are 30, 40, 50 years old now. You know, and I mean, that's history. History isn't just when Samuel Gross built the station, you know.
Yeah.
So my initial, inclination was to, committee about bringing back the, historical commission, and maybe we should do that at some point, but I respect your idea of going to the society and seeing if that's, a potential course of action. And then maybe we committee the idea of reviving the commission, and we could actually talk about the makeup of the commission, because if we're concerned about, a 7-member commission can be challenging, especially trying to fill the membership, but then quorum issues. If we start as a 5-member commission, and then, we have the problem of that we have more people that want to do it and need it, we can then, amend it and change it to a 7-member commission, as the starting point. I'm just trying to figure out if that, if that timeframe, if you try and get together a society meeting and then you let us know when we're ready, we'll talk about doing a committee on the, commission. But in the meantime, is there any, urgent need for financial support or anything else? Because I know there's bills and, you're one, I'm not afraid to say anything, one breakdown away from a major bill or anything else like this. I mean,
Well, that certainly is a fact. But, I mean, things are sound. There's nothing pending. Early in the winter months, several of us were starting to go through the archives. Some really interesting stuff we found. So right now, there's probably about 5 bins of things that need to be put back in bins. And once that's done, the station is ready to open. So it is something that could be open this year. That would be the intent. They have it open at different times. We talked about the farmer's market. You got a captive audience kind of there during the farmer's market, but that's an awfully big crowd too. But that could be a good time. The station gets very hot in the summer, especially in the afternoons. So, so there's nothing pending, which I think is kind of a good thing where it gives us an opportunity to make a transition. If the building was falling down right now, if there was no one who had keys to it right now, we're in a different spot. But I think we're in a spot where we can kind of figure this out and what that looks like going forward. And I think it could be more than it has been, with all respect to those who have spent, all that time early on to save it.
I do disagree with Trustee Ketchmark on one point, and we talked about this. If we're gonna open that building up, that back staircase needs to be replaced. Kit doesn't think so. I don't think you want a lot of people walking up and down that thing, because I don't think it can hold people. B, it's definitely not the code.
So maybe that's a pending thing right now?
I would say it'd be the first thing if it became a village responsibility. I would like to see that thing replaced with.
But, and I'm not looking to spend, village money, that we did appropriate money or budget money to, about it, but I mean, is there, and I guess this is a question for Adam more, in terms of a legal thing, I mean, is there, we own the land, is there a way that the village could give a stipend to an organization like the Brookfield Historical Society if a major repair or a major incident came up, or a major, or some type of emergency life safety renovation came up? Is there anything that would prevent the village from, because we've appropriated some money for that in general, is there a way that we could do that if it came up?
Yes, I believe that we could make that work. This is a very unique situation that's not really found elsewhere, where it's technically the municipality's property. It's just the fixtures that are on top of it, the actual physical properties, the improvements that are owned by the society. But it's not like you're completely absent from your involvement with this piece of land and what occurs on it. So we could definitely figure out a mechanism for the village to support the structures that are on village land.
Because, I'm sorry, I tend to agree with, Tim, just from, maybe it's the lawyer in me, the standpoint of making this, and maybe if that's something we just proactively plan, that this is going to move forward, that we're going to have traffic, we're going to have people going up there, that, maybe we start getting a price for what it would take to fix the stairs, and, maybe we could, partner with this, the society and make those repairs or accessibility improvements, proactively, because I always thought that because it's on village land that, we, could, we give stipends and things to other organizations that provide community benefit, and, I think there's a tremendous community benefit, and there has been for a long time, so.
And I agree with that. There is the history, though, of the two working together. When we did get the IDOT grant, that was the village and the society putting up, I think, the 20% of it, and IDOT supplying the rest of the funds. So we do have a history of doing this in the past.
That brings up the interesting question. Because it's on the National Register, is it one of the things where any type of improvements need to be approved by anyone or restricted in any way?
We haven't seen that come up in anything other than when we had applied for the grant. There isn't, strong oversight to it, short of if we wanted to do a complete redo and add a second, third story onto it or something, we'd probably hear about it then. But when we originally applied for the grant with IDOT, it was turned down. And part of it, the reason it was turned down is we were replacing windows. And when Illinois Preservation reviewed it, they didn't like reading that. So when we applied the next time round, we were renovating, restoring the existing windows, and that language went over much better with Illinois Preservation.
They don't like solar panels either.
Yeah, I don't think they'd like
They
that.
have to go on the back.
So, a path going forward, just maybe, I don't know what the process or mechanism would be, because I agree with Tim, and I want to see this open and, accessible, maybe see what the process would be for improving the back stairway as an initial thing, and then see if there's some partnership the village can help fund that or do something with that going forward while we're working on you getting the society together and getting direction, and because if we wait to do it,
Sure.
it could, another construction season goes by and another, because the upstairs is such a key part of it. And that's also why I was concerned with, the idea of just having one staff member open the building and be there, because I do think you want to have people to be able to go upstairs, and one staff person monitoring a 2-floor building and everything else. It would be really hard for one person if you had
Absolutely.
several guests there, so.
And the way the museum is put together, both upstairs and downstairs, there's a lot of things on display, but not a lot of things under lock and key. It was meant to see things, and you could touch things and that too, which increases the need to have staff, monitoring people in there. But, the upstairs is certainly you can't keep an eye on both floors if it's one person, but even two people is kind of tough on that.
I just want to add a suggestion, and I'll stop talking about volunteers after this, I promise. But if you're going out to solicit the society about interest in the sale and moving forward with this, it seems like it would be a great opportunity to also ask if they wanted to get re-engaged in some way.
Absolutely.
And so, that there would be this commission opportunity, and this is what it would mean to serve on that, or this is what it would mean to be a docent, and it would mean this type of commitment. I'm happy to work with you on that.
But see, this is, and Trustee Klusny, you and I have talked about this a little bit. Mm-hmm. This is where, society's been around for 50 years. A lot of people have come and go. Village's been around for a long time. It's going to be around for a long time. If you have the Historical Commission, it's easier to plug people into that as volunteers than it is with the society, really. Because of the challenges after 50 years with the volunteer group. But the village, Okay, there's going to be staff that changes here, and the liaison to the commission changes and all that, but you still will have a way for someone who calls and says, I'm interested in the historical commission, okay, sign up. So that's where you can plug those people into that, and, maybe there's the volunteer arm of the historical commission, too.
Yeah, that's what
You
I
know.
mean. I think there's
Right.
it's kind of a lower commitment way to still stay engaged.
Absolutely,
and help.
but just for those people, because right now, it's quite frankly, it's hard. Someone who's interested in history, okay, what do we do with them at the museum? We got a lot of boxes out there we were sorting through. You can come sort through some boxes with us, but.
I can write up a volunteer description draft for you.
I'm sorry, we have kind of a plan of action. You'll talk to the society, and if staff can assist in, the process that might be necessary to improve or, redo the stairs. And, I know kind of probably created some work and some problems because, putting it out to bid and getting prices and everything else like this. But I think we need to move this along a little bit because, if I'm reading the board correctly, there is support of the building and the village either acquiring it or helping support it going forward. We all consider it a valuable asset. So let's, it's going to take some time, but let's kind of move forward on multiple fronts, okay? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for all the time on this. That ends the items we have up for discussion. I will now open it up, the meeting to public comment. Is there anyone on this side? Mrs. Dufek, would you like to say something?
I would like trustee Kaluzny to also tell me the time for the conservation. Is it May 21st, the meeting at 6:30?
We have a Conservation Commission meeting tomorrow, but then on May 21st, we're having a joint meeting of Parks and Rec and Conservation to talk about South Kiwanis. So tomorrow is Conservation at 6:30.
No, the combined meeting, though.
Oh, the combined meeting is May 21st.
Is that the meeting where the South Kiwanis Woods will be addressed? Because I think that's what she's interested in. Or is tomorrow's meeting, what is tomorrow, is the South?
It's on the agenda tomorrow for the Conservation Commission to discuss it, and then the joint meeting will be May 21st.
I have a question for Pitt, talking about the Historical Society. When Joe Staceco left, did he give you any info, any historical pictures and different?
His son actually did. I think we had 2 or 3 boxes, and there were a lot of interesting things we were going through. Joe was Mr. Hollywood here, so there was quite a bit we had gotten from him.
Because he had asked me at the time if I had anything.
Yep.
And I said, not really, but just different things that
Yep.
took place, the Jubilee and stuff like that. But, yeah, he had a lot.
Anything else, Mrs. Dufek?
No.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone on this side? Any public comment? Okay, hearing none, that's all the items we have on the Committee of the Whole. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn the Committee of the Whole at 7:45 PM.
So moved.
Second.
Motion was made by trustee Cote, second by trustee Kaluzny. Roll call, please.
Trustee Ketchmark?
Aye.
Trustee Cote?
Aye.
Trustee Hendricks?
Aye.
Trustee Gahuli?
Aye.
Trustee Kaluzny?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you for coming, everybody.